all good. How are you doing?
Excellent. How are you today, Mr. Downs?
Very good, thanks. Thanks. That's a very busy wall you've got behind you there with a lot
You
of
bet.
caps and stuff like that.
You bet I don't need a fake one. I'll just use the real one.
Is that your man cave?
Yeah, no, it's the working office for sure.
Oh, right. Okay,
But
good,
it does
good.
look that way, doesn't it?
I hope you know where everything is.
Yeah. Oh, that's why it's up there, so I don't have to don't have to find it. So, how's the weather where you're at today?
Yeah, it's a beautiful day here in sunny South Wales in the UK. It's good. Yeah,
Excellent.
we're enjoying a couple of days of nice sunshine prior to the big coronation that's coming up this weekend.
Indeed, indeed. That's this is our first day of real summer as well here. So away we go. We'll just
Whereabouts are you? What part of
we're in
Canada?
we're at mile zero of the Alaska Highway, so it's northern British Columbia, Canada.
Oh, right. Okay, you're up the top there. Okay.
You bet. Yeah. Closer, mirror to the sky, if you will. If you
Oh, yeah, that's it.
pardon the
Yeah.
pun. But no, let's just jump right into it. I know we got a bit of a limited time, but
Yeah.
obviously we'll talk about mainly, obviously, mirror to the sky, and yes, but I want to jump into some songwriting and writing questions just from the
Yeah,
get go,
sure.
just because of your breadth of biography and history. So when you sit down and you write something on your own, whether it's at your house or you come up with something in the garden, do you know immediately if it's going to be, and I'm talking going back over the years, if it's going to be something for Asia or Yes or DBA or something with back in the day with you and John with Icon, or do you just keep it all open and then see where it falls?
I think generally it floats to the top, and it goes in different directions. And certainly, I think when you get an initial idea, it tends to, it tends to find its own direction. And so I think that, yeah, I mean, DBA is quite a sort of specific kind of writing. Certainly, when I worked a lot with John Wetton, we had a very inner understanding, if you like, between each other that we knew that the ideas we put forward together would fuse and become part of our writing direction. So it's not really that complex in terms of, as I say, things generally find their own path and they rise to the surface and go in a different direction.
Okay. And as far as finding a path and a quick one, the new album for Yes is a very fast turnaround as far as the band's concerned from the Quest.
Yeah.
How does that fall out, and how does that happen with this collection of songwriters and songs?
Well, I think that this lineup's been together for. I mean, sadly, as everyone knows, we lost Alan last year, almost a year ago. But of course, Jay had been understudying for Alan when Alan was not well for quite a few years. So we've got this understanding between us. Really, this lineup has been pretty much together for the last 7 years. So there's a whole thing about maybe we felt that John would be more, would become more to the fore because his writing previously had been fairly limited, and so I think it was important that certainly John's blossomed very much as a writer, and we recognise that and allow him to come through with his ideas, his vocal harmonies and all the rest of it, and his lyrical ideas as well. So it's very much a case of letting things find their own way. And I think with John's writing, he's really come on very strong as a writer, and is very been very dominant, particularly on the last two albums.
Absolutely. And on that note, on the new album, All Connected, it just dropped last week as far as getting public. Talk to me about that song, and then walk me through the album as far as tunes that are your favorites or standout ones for you in the studio.
Well, I think All Connected is one of the ones that I really latched onto in terms of the arrangement, because we were experimenting with a lot of chunks of ideas, and it got more and more expanded as a piece of music. And I think that particularly with this album, we're looking much more towards musicality in instrumental sections as well as the big vocal sections, which of course has always been a feature of Yes's music going back to the very beginning. Is that there were these big orchestral instrumental sections. So I think that we really adopted that principle throughout the album. I mean, there's some more dynamic songs in a way, but I think that Yes Music has been, without going into too much detail track by track, but Yes Music has always had a very dynamic aspect to it. So you go from a very, very quiet little keyboard vignette to this huge explosive sound with the big drums and the flying bass. Billy's bass playing is pretty astonishing on this album, and I think All Connected is a very good example of that.
Oh, absolutely. So I mean, you're 40 years with Yes, and I know this is something that Mr. Gilmour in Pink Floyd and then Phil in Genesis has to deal with by fans or even members of the band. Are you still considered the new boy, or are you
That's interesting, actually. Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of keyboard players in Yes, you've had certainly four main keyboard players, including myself. I mean, Patrick did one album, as we know, Rila. But of course, Rick, Tony Kaye, and Rick were very, very influential, particularly in the earlier albums. So. But it's for me, it's a great privilege to be learning all of that stuff. Well, I mean, I knew quite a lot of it anyway because I was a big fan of the band from the beginning. But to be able to process that, all those individual styles, if you like, of Tony was a very, very different kind of keyboard player than Rick, for instance, and Tony was much more Hammond organ, roots-on kind of player, and Rick was much more. When the synthesizers started to develop, he was very influential, I think, in we're playing Moog synthesizers and that sort of thing. So it's a very interesting, for me, I mean, as a former music student, it's a very interesting from a musicology standpoint, is seeing how the guys put all this great music together, and the experimentation, the arrangements, all of that. So I think that this album is not necessarily a continuation of it, but it's a rediscovery of some of those great moments in Yes music.
And on this album and in the past, but specifically as it relates to this one, when it comes to being the champion of the song and being the lead writer of lyrics, is that just a case of whoever brings the most of the ideas forward, or does it, because it's a band and you have to have a front man, it does fall on John sometimes more than it would,
I think it's going to fall more on John. I think that's largely because it's all very well a vocalist singing other people's ideas and
right.
lyrically, but I think I always used to have this conversation with John Wetton, is that you've really got to believe in what you're singing about, and I
Sure.
think that
Yeah.
the delivery is very, very important from a lead vocalist in so much as what they're singing about and the lyrical content. They actually believe in. And, I think if you go back to all of John Anderson's compositions, I mean, a lot of lyrics don't really make that much sense, but they sound great, and he believed in it. And I think that's the important thing, is that, that commitment from the lead vocal is very, very important. And because, however great the music is and however great the rhythm section and the soloists and all the rest of it, if you've got to have that overriding thing going down the middle, which is the lead vocalist.
Absolutely. And on this album, it's not the first time Yes has jumped into that orchestral neck of the woods, but it's something that obviously does touch on the keyboard area a little bit. Is that something you demo out, or is that something you leave to well, in this case, Steve and the arrangement with the orchestra?
Well, I think the arrangement of the orchestra tends to cross over sometimes into the keyboard department, as you said. And sometimes it's it's a great enhancement. I think that we try and not use it necessarily as a dominant influence, because of course you want to see and you want to hear the individual players in the band as well. I think that Yes is a band that is created from within, and it creates its own sound from within. And when we take it on the road, we want to be able to perform that music as it is, as it was written and as it was arranged. But yeah, I mean, we generally think that the orchestral stuff is a good way of enhancing the arrangements. And the orchestra in particular, I think the arranger is very conscious and very understanding of Yes music, so it doesn't become too much of a dominant feature, but it's more of a supporting feature.
Good. And obviously this year, obviously new product out, you're going to hit the road. Is Yes guess, going to hit the road a little bit heavier just because you were coming out of COVID and all of that and being cooped up for the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think it has a significant influence on the way that we think about things, and certainly, it was a very strange period as we all experienced for everybody that. We went through something that none of us had ever experienced before, and certainly I think it brought us all together in some ways. That we were, when we did the quest, we were not working collectively in the studio. A lot of it was done via piping it in, and Steve was working with the engineer and putting it all together. So it was a very different way of working, I think, from the way that Yes had worked historically. But having said that, I think that one has to cut one's coat according to one's cloth, and certainly we did have that notion in mind when we did the Quest album. But I think with this album, it's been more. The gloves have come off a bit more, and we've been able to get more hands-on. We've been able to collaborate together in the studio more. Certainly, John and Billy have been spending quite a bit more time over in the UK. So we've had the facility to work together much closer, and I think that really shows with the album in terms of the way that the arrangements have been put together. Is that there's a more of a continuity and understanding between all the various elements.
Well, I think that comes with the producer you've got being a bit more in-house as well.
Well, that's it. I think that when Steve put his hand up and said, he'd like to produce the Quest, I think that everyone was very supportive of that, because Steve is he's the old timer. Yes, I mean, I'm the new kid,
Yep.
relatively.
Yep.
And I've worked with Steve for 40 odd years, so I know Steve very, very well, and I understand how he operates, and I think we always had a very good relationship between guitar and keyboards when we worked together on a number of projects. So I think he was the man really to control the whole thing and collate all the information that was coming at him, and he did a great job doing that. And I think it was a continuation in some respects when we did to the Sky was more, although it was more hands-on from the band, Steve was still, holding it all together and following up with all the different ideas and things that came into play.
Well, and I think that Downs Howe writing credit is one of those long-lasting duos that's left in rock and roll, as we all get older in age as well.
I know, and it's nice that we can still. We can still work together and collaborate. As I say, after 40 odd years, there aren't that many musicians or collaborations that say that they last that long. Certainly, we're very lucky that we can still get in the studio, put our ideas together, and see what we come up with.
Yeah, and have a good time. If I'm not mistaken, Tales of Topographic is 50 this year. Are there any plans to celebrate that anniversary, come the end of the year?
Well, yeah, we've been talking about doing, I mean, we're not going to do the whole 4 sides. I mean, that would be, anniversaries are great, but, Tales from Topographic is a huge would be a challenge. I mean, we played 2 sides. We played two of the sides before in their entirety, but I think we want to promote the new material as well, and I think we're talking about doing a more refined version of Tales. We certainly do acknowledge that Tales is 50 years old, and I think as we did last year when Close to the Edge enjoyed its 50th.
Very good. So and one on that note, is Cruise to the Edge sailing this year or in 2024?
Is it what? Sorry, Close to the Edge.
Cruise to the Edge.
Oh, Cruise to the Edge. Sorry. Yeah, I think that we've not been on the last one because I think there was still this big question mark about COVID and all the rest of it, and
right.
I think we were a bit unsure about how that was going to work out. But I certainly think we'll give it consideration. We're not making, we haven't made any plans as yet. But it was certainly coming out in the autumn or the fall in North America, and I hopefully will come over. Been a while since we played in Canada. I think the last time was maybe when Chris was with us. Was
I saw you in Calgary in 2013, I think, and 2014 around there.
2014, yeah, 2014, yeah, and that was. It was pretty cold then. We ended up and we went because it was winter time. It was a winter tour, and we worked our way all the way across. Starting in Victoria, actually. I think we started the first show and then worked our way through. But yeah, I mean, I would love to do it again. I think that now the COVID thing seems to be, drifting into obscurity somewhat. We'll hopefully be able to get back out there and do what we do.
One last question before we wrap it up, and it's not just Yes's relationship with Roger Dean, but yours specifically as it relates to album covers for other vehicles as well. Talk to me about how that works with him. Is it a case of him showing you guys 3 or 4 different variations like Hypnosis would do with Floyd, and you guys picking one, or do you just play the music and then let him react, or how does that process work? Because
I think Roger is a lot more bespoke than that. I think that he likes to know what the music's about before he gets going on the painting. So the ideas of some of the song titles and things like that are thrown at Roger, and this sort of sparks his creativity, and he'll generally work on a painting from the ground upwards, and it's not a case of we'll say he'll finish a painting and we'll go, oh no, that's not going to work.
Okay.
It's a constant thing where he provides sketches and say this could go here, and it's almost in the same way that we develop the music. We do it over a period of time, and the same with Roger is that we work closely with him. I mean, I think Roger's fantastic to work with him. I first met him on the Drama album, and of course since then he's done most of the Yes albums. He's done most of the Asia albums. He's done most of the DBA albums, in fact. So it's great to have Roger there because he always seems to manage to come up with something that's original and reflects the music. And I think Mirror to the Sky is a perfect example of him getting that title in his head and then coming up with the beautiful artwork.
Oh no, absolutely. I think his work is very much that, and it's neat to know that there is a collaboration though. So you can say, somebody says, "Oh, we like the look. Throw a pyramid in the back of that one," or whatever the suggestion is, right?
Yeah. I think like you said with Hypnosis or someone like that, they probably say we got this one or we got this one or that one. They say, oh, yeah, I like that, Whereas I think, as I say, Roger's much more of a bespoke artist and designs something that's going to reflect what's inside the tin.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, Mirror to the Sky, it's coming out in about 2 weeks.
So, yeah, looking forward to it.
And then obviously, obviously a European and then hopefully a North American tour as well.
Brilliant. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Mr. Geoff.
Okay. Thanks for the interview. Yeah, good to talk to you. Thank you very much.